Hi, I'm Dan Matutina, a designer and illustrator based in Makati. I moved to Dang's place when the lockdown happened, so I'm currently in Las Piñas. My work setup has always been mobile, so I can technically work anywhere. I'm here for design dialogues at home to talk about developing concepts for illustration. I've worked on illustrations for brands, editorial, digital, and print. My illustration style is a combination of angular, graphic shapes, layered with hand-painted textures. I've been using this particular illustration style for more than a decade. I never really discovered this style. It's the result of the process of putting together different styles and aesthetics that I loved. From Filipino masters like Manansala, Luz, Kyokok, to the Balos movement, to Eric Nietzsche, to animators Ivan Earl and Gendy Tarkovsky, to other illustrators and designers that I've been a fan of. I prefer conceptualizing and sketching in coffee shops because I like the ambience. It's also nice to work while drinking a good cup of coffee. But now, since I've been mostly staying home, I had to adapt to a new work setup. I normally do my sketches using pen and paper, but I forgot to bring my sketchbooks when the lockdown happened. So now I'm doing all my sketches on the Surface Pro. I shift from using the Surface Pro and my MacBook Pro for illustration and design work. I use geometric and angular shapes in my illustration work. After I finish the base illustration, I then apply the textures and brushwork. I created the textures I put on my illustration. I used to make my own brushes before, but Adobe Photoshop has much better brush options now. It's important to spend time in the concept stage of illustration projects. While the aesthetics of the final image is what draws people's attention, the story and the idea behind it is what makes it thoughtful. One particular illustration project that was challenging to work on was Tokyo Midtown Design Touch. It was challenging because of the simplicity of the work. I personally find working with simple visuals more difficult because the final work needs to be impactful and have a good concept. I learned from this experience that if there's trust between client and illustrator, challenging projects can have great results. I personally enjoy working on editorial illustration projects because the subject matter is always different. The work needs to be conceptual, and you have to encapsulate the editorial content into one visual image. The reason why I like doing editorial illustration work is the challenge I get from doing it. The brief can range from creating sceneries, creating portraits, to more literal translation of the content of the article, to abstract and very conceptual translation of the article. So the range is wide, and it makes it fun and challenging for me to work with, different briefs and different expectations for illustration. Apart from that, I also like that I can work with different topics. Sometimes it's an investigative journalism piece. Sometimes it can be a fun piece about travel, about tourism. So the range of topics, the range of briefs, the range of challenge is what makes editorial illustration fun for me. The Death of Privacy illustration is still one of my personal favorite editorial illustration projects. The brief was to show a visual and illustration that will represent or communicate the death of privacy. And I made 3 sketches for this. The first sketch I called RI Privacy. So I wanted to show a person looking over his privacy grave. The intention was to show a series of padlocked graves inside the cemetery. This is a more general and conceptual approach to the whole article. So the second sketch, the idea is the price of information. I wanted to show a burglar's hand with a key. The hand of a key is a coin, to show that his privacy was bought, and this is the guy who bought his privacy, and now he's using the key to open the locks to his private information. The third one is about surveillance. This particular scene is about online services spying on us. You can see a person in his laptop surfing a website. Could be a social media website, could be something else. Attached to his laptop to replace the front-facing webcam is a big surveillance camera. I wanted the scene to be dark, and we will only see details of the guy's face, his laptop, and the camera. After sending the sketches, they picked the third illustration, the one about surveillance. And I then started working the actual illustrations, so creating the vectors, the composition, and then the actual illustration. When I was doing this, at first I thought it had to have that seriousness in it because the topic was very serious, but I didn't want it to be very black and white or to show the seriousness to it. So it was a bit monochromatic also. There's a feeling of noir, but there's a bit of color, so I wanted it to be atmospheric also as an illustration, and I was really happy with how this turned out. I worked on the cover of IBM Systems Magazine Mainframe Edition, and they wanted to explore 2 scenarios for the cover. One theme is extracting insight from data and delivering business value with that insight. Kind of like a headlight illuminating specific pathways in the pool of data to signify this insight, or sort of connecting the dots that nobody else had previously connected. I wanted to show data as circles and rectangles, kind of like abstract shapes, because data is sometimes abstract in its form. And then I wanted to show a spotlight that looks like the shape of the eye, sort of illuminating this data. And the eyeball is the pool of data that signify this insight, so it shows its actual form. If you look, the data outside it is sort of chaotic, and the one inside is more of a bit more concrete in terms of the imagery. Another theme was to bring analytics to the data on site rather than moving data to a data lake and performing that analytics somewhere else. The second sketch I did was to show the threads of data on the cover, forming spaces, kind of like an overlapping maze, and then we see people inside it, kind of navigating towards this mess of data and information, and then illuminating them. Like literally, I wanted to show a person inside them and sort of illuminating this crevices and spaces inside. The art director picked the first sketch that I made, which was also my favorite, and also because I wanted, because it's IBM, I wanted to give a nod to the rebus that Laurent did before, so that I was sort of, part of that nod to it. And then once they gave me the go signal, I started working on the computer and Photoshop and Illustrator. And then apart from, showing the idea, the concept behind the cover, I also wanted the feel to sort of encapsulate what we wanted it to be a bit more, like a dark, there's that atmospheric feeling in the illustration. And then the illuminated part is where the focus is all about. And I'm just happy by how this illustration turned out. One of the fun and challenging part of doing editorial illustration is working with the layout that's given to you. one of the examples of the projects I've done that will illustrate this is the illustration work I did for Plan W. The story was about the disruption in strawberry fields. So I made 3 sketches. This was very fun to do. The first sketch showed the different plots in the strawberry farm, and I just used the columns. Like, the layout is 6 columns, and I wanted to show the rows of farms in sort of like 3 big columns. And you can see on the third most column, the plot is disrupted by a cursor moving it around. This to show that the part where you can use an online trading house for strawberries. So, this is a bit more subtle approach to that disruption, which I really liked. The second sketch shows a farm, and there's a bit more perspective to it. And the imagery on top, I wanted to occupy the whole width of the spread. As it gets closer to the viewer, you can see that the farm, the field, gets bigger and bigger until it transitions into a laptop screen with the farmer using like one of the services that was featured in the article. And the third one is just a different, perspective of the strawberry farm. So it's a bit more topmost view. And then I wanted to show rows of strawberry fields, plants, but in this different rows, you don't see fruits, and the part of the fruit where there are people picking strawberries is inside a greenhouse. So this is one way to disrupt a strawberry farm based on the article. So after doing the sketches, they picked the second sketch. So after doing this, I then proceed to doing the illustration in Illustrator and Photoshop, working with the layout that was given to me, and then overlaying all these illustrations on that. One of the changes that happened was I decided to change the laptop with a tablet, with at least there's a bit more tactility to the interaction of the hand. Instead of clicking the trackpad on it. So yeah, there's a bit of there was a bit of challenge doing this because of the layout, but it made the whole experience of illustrating for this more fun for me.
Finding your own style is a process, and it takes a while. Don't rush it. If you're a young illustrator, it's best to expose yourself to different styles and techniques. By doing so, you'll be able to pick certain aspects of those different styles and apply it as your own. Illustration, just like any creative practice, involves continuous learning. It's best to expose yourself to different experiences by reading books, watching movies, playing video games, traveling, and meeting new people. These different experiences has always inspired me to be better, and the drive to be better has always fueled me. Hard work and a little bit of luck will get your work noticed. Continue learning, keep honing your skills, and putting your work out there. By doing this, when the opportunity knocks, you'll be ready. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you have questions, you can leave them at the comment section below. We also have an illustration exercise where you'll be able to apply the techniques and tips we've talked about in this video. You can also tag me at Twisted Fork and at @1.5 so we can check out your work. Thank you so much for watching this video again. This is Dan Matutina, temporarily based in Las Piñas, and this is the Design Dialogues at Home.